I'm actually really excited to see that Parler is in fact back. Tell us a little bit about how Parler got back on its feet after this kind of monstrous attack on it by the kingpins of digital media. How did you survive this attempted assassination?
Well, thanks for having me on, Dinesh. We are still in the process, actually, of showing that we have survived the digital assassination, as you call it, because as it stands right now, we are active on the web, as you have seen. We've gotten back up. We have found independent suppliers to serve all the needs of our stack, but we are still in the process of trying to get back onto Apple's App Store, for example. And we were #1 on the App Store when we were taken down that weekend in January, as you know.
Let's talk about that for a moment, Apple. Did you get the sense that Apple took you down in a manner that was open to putting you back up again? In other words, are there discussions going on with Apple about getting back on the app? I mean, I can't overstate the value of having the Apple app. I mean, you know it as well as I do. I have an iPhone right here in my pocket, and I have to go now online to post on Parler through the web. I would prefer to do it through my Apple app if there were one. What are the chances that Apple is going to kind of let you back in? And are you worried about dependency on Apple? Because, of course, if they did it to you once, presumably they can do it to you again.
Yes, dependency on Apple is a problem, I think, for anybody who wants to be on the App Store and who depends on the access to the millions of users that the App Store provides. We are still in ongoing discussions with them. If you have seen the CEO, Tim Cook, in interviews, he has characterized what has happened to Parler as a suspension. And in particular, he had focused on inciting and violent content. We are now in a discussion, now that we have shown that we are effectively dealing with inciting and violent content on Parler. They are now starting to talk about what they call objectionable content. And we also believe that we handle that sort of content in a completely appropriate way as well. But now we are being asked to have that discussion with them. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Let's pursue that a little bit more, this notion of objectionable content, because it looks to me that once you move from inciting violence, let's just call it the fire in the crowded theater, to objectionable, you're now in a very subjective realm where you find this objectionable, I find that objectionable. So suddenly you're now trespassing, I think, on the free speech zone. Would it be worth Parler having the app to give up the ability to basically say, listen, if something is legal, if you're not doing something that is calling people to break the law, you should be able to have a very robust debate. Sure, people will have highly objectionable views, but so what? Go read John Stuart Mill. Highly objectionable views have a place in free society, and there's really no good moral case for censoring them.
Yes, so there is a lot to talk about here. And in general, I align myself with Nadine Strawson, who is the former head of the ACLU. She's written a book called Hate, and she talks about the fact that if you are truly concerned to resist hate, and again, hate can be defined in a variety of ways, but if you're talking about discrimination on the basis of race or religion, ethnicity, and other sorts of things, and doing this in a way that has nothing to do with the substance or the merit of the person, this is, perhaps what you mean by that. If you want to resist that, then the best way to do it is with more speech, not with cutting off speech. And so at Parler, we deal with this sort of content, but we deal with it in a way that puts the control into the hands of the individual users.
I mean, that's the point, isn't it? That if someone says something hateful, it's kind of like if you were to say something hateful on the street, people would chastise you because they would respond to it. And so there's a built-in mechanism for checking any kind of extremism of language. That's why people are a little careful what they say, because they know there's going to be blowback. Now, let me ask you this about, you were talking a little bit about the negotiations with Apple and them letting you back. And what would you say are the chances that will in fact happen?
I'm optimistic that they will let us back on. As I said, in the past, our discussions have focused on the inciting and violent content, and they had not raised this issue before. But I believe that because we have provided tools for users on Parler to deal with the sort of content that they're concerned with, that they should see that we have invested resources and that we show that we care about furthering civil productive discussions among people of competing viewpoints on Parler. So I'm optimistic for now. We'll see what happens.
Now, isn't part of the project to convince Apple and the public that part of this was all based on a mythology, which was that Parler was the staging ground for January 6th? I've seen a good deal of evidence, including some tabulated evidence, that places like Facebook, most of the people who had pre-planned the sort of entry into the Capitol, they were conspiring not on Parler, they were conspiring on Facebook. Isn't that a fact?
Well, we do know that that content was in abundance everywhere across the varying platforms, and that Parler was not unique in that. And we also know that a group feature like the feature that Facebook has and that Parler did not have is one that is better suited for any sort of planning or coordination. Parler has always prohibited violent and inciting content. No system for dealing with that content, whether proactive and automated or otherwise, is perfect in this regard. And we all know that in the weeks leading to January 6th, that content was proliferating everywhere. So we do believe there was a double standard as applied to Parler. And in part, you could notice that everyone knew that Trump was being kicked off of Facebook and Twitter, and everybody suspected that he was coming over to Parler. That is one piece of circumstantial evidence that might show the motive of this. The other, of course, was the Twitter mobs who were tagging us and specifically calling for these big tech vendors to deplatform us.
When we come back, I want to talk further to Amy Peikoff about the broader problem of digital censorship and whether the best solution is to have some sort of regulation at the federal or state level, or whether it is the market itself. We'll be right back.